Welcome to Geocache Adventures with me, Shadow Dragon 1, where I explore the world of geocaching. If you like the podcast, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or the Geocache Adventures Facebook page. Or share it with somebody that you think would enjoy it. Word of mouth is a great way to spread the podcast. You can also join Geocache Adventures on Buy Me a Coffee. Just follow Geo Adventures, that's one word, GEO Adventures on Buy Me a Coffee, and get behind the scenes on every episode or become a member to unlock other exclusive content. Hi, everybody. Quick note before we start the episode. There were some technical issues that came up during recording that may be apparent in the audio as you're listening. I do apologize for that. I did my best to clean it up. It's still a great interview, and I do hope you still enjoy it. Hi, everybody. Amy, Shadow Dragon 1 here, and with me today is fellow geocacher, Irvas. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we get started, can you tell us how you got geocaching?
Yeah, so it was a while ago already. It's gonna be 15 years this year. It started in 2008 in Latvia, so I'm originally from Latvia. And it was like a summer, like a kind of end of the summer, but still before the beginning of the kind of school year. I had finished high school, I was in uni, but I had my best friend who was still in high school. And so he called me one day and he's like, and yeah, also I was living, because I was in uni, I was living in the capital, but I'm from a smaller hometown. And so
Okay.
he called me and he was like, hey, next time when you come back to the home, to our hometown, I'll show you something really cool. But he didn't tell me what it was, before I actually turned up. So I was like, oh, what is it? Anyway, so I turned up and he was like, so there's this thing, like I heard this from a friend. There's this thing, people hide boxes and then other people go and look for them. And I was like, oh, okay, sounds something really strange. But yeah, let's go and try and find one. And we didn't have any in our hometown. And the closest one was about 20K away in like a bigger town. But I
Okay.
mean, at that point, I'm like a broke student. He's like a high school student. Like none of us had a car or driver's license or anything like that. So we hitchhiked to the other town. And also we didn't and so that's 2008. So there's no smartphones. There's, we didn't have any GPS or anything. So basically he had registered on the site. And so he looked up the details of the geocache and I think he just written them down. And so we went to the spot, but this one, it was so you didn't really need GPS because it was like an obvious big bridge and you had to kind of crawl inside the bridge and then go all along the bridge, inside the bridge, and at the end of the tunnel, you find this cache. So, we didn't
Okay.
need GPS for it. We found it, really excited. Saw some bats in that, the tunnel under the bridge. Exchanged some goodies and hitchhiked back to our hometown. And then so that was that was 1st of August 2008. And so I registered my account on the next day, and then we hitchhiked back to that town again and found another cache.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and that's how we started. And then I think maybe, oh, actually, yeah, I was lying when I said I was a completely broke student, because I had actually started my first full-time job in that year as well. So, but it's still, I bought a Garmin GPS, but not, I think not until a few months later. So maybe
Okay.
the first 30 or so caches, that was the method that we were going and finding them. Either just a printout or some notes written down, or I had an MP3 player with a little tiny color screen, like a 300 times 200 pixel screen. And so I
Okay.
saved screenshots of Google satellite map, and I put those JPEG files on the MP3 player. And then I was looking on the tiny screen and trying to figure out where, because obviously there's no GPS or anything, but I'm just looking where the cache is on the satellite map.
Did you find that difficult to do with that tiny little screen and that little picture?
It's it's all right if you're in town. Like if you're in like urban areas, it's fine because you can see it's this building. It's maybe like north side of this building. But if you're in the woods, it's hopeless.
Oh,
Then
I bet.
you just see a green mushy, and also 15 years ago the satellite maps weren't as detailed, as high resolution as they are now.
Right.
So we were searching for one. I remember one particular cache we were searching for. It was kind of in the woods next to a river, and we couldn't find it. And then so a few months later, when I got my first GPS, we went back there with the GPS, and then I realized, looking at the GPS when we reached ground zero, that previous time we were searching like 400 meters away.
Oh, wow.
So that was hopeless. We couldn't have
That's a
found it.
big distance away.
Yeah.
Well, you're here today to share with us what it's like to geocache in Latvia and also New Zealand. But you've geocached in many countries. So how many countries have you been geocaching in?
So total, I've cached in 44 countries, and plus I have done one ad lab in Houston Airport, but
Okay.
that doesn't ad labs don't add to your country list because that was just a transit. And plus, I have also found one cache in Transnistria, which is like an unrecognized country state in Moldova.
Okay.
But for general purposes, yeah, it's 44 caches. I mean, 44 countries, and I've found at least one cache in each of those 44 countries. But there's some countries in there, so I've looked through the list and I counted the 10 of those countries. I've found 1 to 4 caches, and that's really just like either passing through or stopped over on a layover and then just walked around the airport or something like that. So like 10 of those, I can't really say I've been there, and like it's just like, oh yeah, stopped and found a cache for a check mark. But I could say that the 34 of those countries I've actually really like been through and traveled through. And yeah, and even some countries that like Moldova, for example, or Laos, they only have, well, or at least in that point when I was there, they only had about 20 caches in the whole country. And then I
Okay.
found, even though I only found 5, that means I still found a quarter of all the caches in the country.
Yeah, that's a high percentage rate
Yeah,
if there's
yeah.
only 20 there. So, as we've talked before this interview, you found the most in Latvia and New Zealand. So, how many have you found in those two countries?
So in Latvia, I have found 3,944, and in New Zealand, 4,021. So just recently, just in the last month, in that there was that April challenge wheel thing from Groundspeak,
Hmm.
and I went out to reach those 100 caches for the challenge. Went out and did like this little mystery trail close to where I live, and that ticked me over. That tipped those scales over to New Zealand. Now I found more caches in New Zealand than in Latvia. So yeah,
That's
and
significant numbers in both.
yeah. So there's total. I just looked just before, and there's total 6,899 geocaches in Latvia at the moment total,
Okay.
and 31,257 geocaches in New Zealand. So it's quite a bit of a difference, but then again, New Zealand's also 4 times the landmass, so
It's quite
kind
a
of
bit bigger,
kind
yeah.
kind of makes sense. So it's also about 4 times more geocaches. So the cache density is pretty similar, and New Zealand has that two main islands, and it's also pretty even, and it's 15,000 in South Island where I live and 16,000 in North Island.
Okay.
But yeah, so for the last 7 years I've lived in New Zealand, and even still, yeah, if you look at the percentage, then I've still technically found more than 50% of caches in Latvia. Although lots of the ones I have found are archived now, but if you look at Project GC stats, the percentage just counts. Even they are archived, it counts towards your total percentage.
So you've been busy geocaching, it sounds like.
Yeah, well, and then again, it's 15 years, so if you look at some of those other profiles, that started 5 years ago, and now they have found 20,000. So in that sense, I'm not maybe even that prolific, like I found it, less than 1,000 caches per year on average. So
That's still a lot.
it's still a lot,
That's a
but
lot.
it's
But
it's
it's
not a
yeah,
lot for some other geocaches.
I understand what you mean. So let's start with talking a bit about Latvia. So can you tell us, for those of us who aren't very familiar with the country, what is the landscape like? What's the culture of that country like?
Yeah, so it's a small, first of all, it's a small northeastern European country. Yeah, if you look at the map, kind of look at the border of like the western border of Russia. That's where we're sitting by the Baltic Sea, and just south of Finland, north of Poland, kind of thing. That's how I always explain people. And yeah, so we have quite a big sea border, so we're not landlocked, and the country's flat. So we have in Latvian language, there's no different word for a hill or a mountain. So we
Okay.
call all our hills mountains, but the highest one is 312 meters above sea level. So,
Okay.
you can imagine it's just like, yeah, it's just like these low rolling hills along the country. There's lots of lakes and rivers and lots of forests. So at least that's this what the state forest agency claims is that we have like 54% forest of the country. So
Okay.
and there are lots of forests, and that also means the geocaches that there's lots out and about. There's no, but also there's no big hikes. There's no big
Okay.
mountains to go, but you can still do a fair amount of hiking through the forest, but it's just you can't find a place that would require you to do an overnight hike to find a cache, because everything is at least or at most a few hours from a road.
Okay. Okay.
But that also doesn't that doesn't mean there's no hard caches. There's actually lots of hard caches.
So the country of Latvia, is it like here in the US, we're broken up into states and the states are broken up into counties. How is the areas of Latvia defined? Do they have states? Is it
So we
region?
have so we have regions. We have the kind of historical regions, which they don't serve any uh, they don't serve any kind of administrative purpose nowadays, or there's no different council or anything in the historical regions, but they are still
Okay.
really prominent in a way. Yeah, that's just that's the four main regions where the country is divided into, and then like legally, administratively, we have the counties, or
Okay.
parishes, or however you would like to call them, municipalities. Um,
Okay.
and there's been some changes over the years. So actually, I'm quite I was quite happy to find. So I found at least one cache. There used to be 119 counties in the country, but then they did like a big administrative reform a few years ago, and now there's only 43 counties.
Oh,
So they've
wow. Big
reduced.
change.
Yeah, so they kind of reduced. It was the whole thing, like, centralizing the local, like little local councils and all that, and
Mm.
make trying to trying to make the less of an administrative apparatus, like. And so, but yeah, I'm quite happy that, and it's also now it's reflected into, because those stats you can't see on geocaching.com, but you can see those county stats on, well, maybe for the states you can on geocaching.com. I don't know,
Um, you
like for
can see
US.
states in the US, but not
Yeah,
not counties. We have to use
yeah.
Project GC for that.
But yeah, so on Project GC, that's also the reforms reflected now. So if you look at the Latvia on the stats in Project GC, you see those 43 counties, whereas you used to see the 119 before.
Wow. So it sounds like you guys have the equivalent of county counting that a lot of people here in the States like to try to get all the counties for a state. Only your
Yeah, I guess so.
counties are for
Yeah,
the whole
in a
country in a
single
way.
state. Yeah, because in the whole
Yeah.
country you would have, what is it, hundreds or is it thousands?
We have a little over 3,000 counties in the US total.
No,
So
wow.
between
Yeah.
all 50 states. So it's a lot. And I have met I know I'm sure there's other geocachers out there, but I have met um one couple that team cached together. They have their own accounts, but they, cache together, and they actually managed to hit every single county in the United States, except there's one county in Hawaii that does not allow geocaches because it's a leprosy colony. Yeah,
Wow.
so it's quite the
That's
feat to get. It's there's a total of 3,143 counties in the United States.
yeah, it's a number.
Yeah. It's it's a lot. um
That's the 1/3 of the count of caches I have found in total. So
so in Latvia, in your experience, what makes geocaching unique there?
so yeah, I think the most the most unique thing, which has it's kind of normalized now, which is and it's not a bad thing in for this one, because but I can tell you what definitely was the most unique thing when I started. Well, I didn't know that it was until I went and geocached in other countries. Was that in Latvia, the geocaches seemed, most geocaches were really kind of adventurous in a sense, and the terrain ratings were really underrated. And which is explained with the thing by the demographics. So I started caching 2008, and I was like, what was it, 20 years old? And then I didn't know any other geocaches besides my friend who told me about it. But then later that year I went to my first event, and then I got to know more geocachers, and most of them were in their 20s and 30s. Like I would have only seen maybe a couple geocachers older than 40. And that also means, when geocachers go out and place geocaches, you know, yeah, it's so easy to climb this tree, so it's going to be a terrain tree, even though you have to climb a tree, 15 meters up. Or if it's on an island in a lake, requires swimming or a boat, but it's not hard, so it's also terrain tree. So it's, you know, the kind of those guidelines. Obviously, there's those guidelines from Groundspeak, and you know, if you need the specialized equipment, that's a terrain 5 by default.
Yeah.
But in Latvia, but that's why I'm saying it's more streamlined now. But it used to be that, you know, people are like, no, 5 stars. No, 5 star is something like, you know, you're in full climbing gear, you know, abseiling down in a cave somewhere, and then you need to crawl through tight spaces, and you know, do like extreme stuff. And there's and also we had and still have a real affection to bridges. So if you're in Latvia and you're, you know, driving over a bridge, there's a high possibility there's a cache under the bridge.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's so in the capital there's this big river that divides the capital in two, called Daugava. So the capital is called Riga, and there's the main bridges that connect the two sides of the city. And there's a suspension bridge. There's well, we call it the stone bridge, and then there's a iron bridge, which is the railway bridge, and there's an island bridge, and then there's the new southern bridge. So 5 main bridges. And at some point there was caches under all of them, but again, they're not all active now because of simply because of reasons that to find them you were in high risk of being arrested.
Oh.
Because say railway bridge is it's like a, what do you call, there's a special term for it, I think, you know, it's like a significant kind of like a significant object for the state.
Okay.
You know, like if someone planted explosives on the railway bridge,
Right.
you know, it's a so like it's a heightened security
Yeah, I
area.
can't think of the term
And so
offhand,
no
but yeah.
one should be really, you know, loitering around there, except people who, you know, work
That
there.
makes sense.
So yeah, there were some of those where yeah, so they're all under the bridges, and you need to get inside the bridges and, you know, get inside the kind of maintenance shafts and tunnels to get those
Oh,
geocaches.
wow.
And so, and there were lots of geocaches like that when I started. And again, yeah, it's explained with the fact that, yeah, all the people were 20 something, you know, they all really like to, you know, climb buildings, explore abandoned places, and do stuff like that. And then and at that point there was not much traveling geocaching going on, I think. Like I think mostly people were sticking around their own countries.
Okay.
At least that was my impression. Because all our events were just local events. I think we got our first meet and greet event where somebody from another country came and set up an event. That was only, you know, like 5 years later or something after I started, like a bit later. And, you know, if you look at the events in a country now, most of them is going to be geocachers coming and setting a meet and greet events.
Do you?
And so then those other geocachers were coming into the country, and then they were finding, oh, you know, oh, it's a terrain 3 cache, you know, friendly, tourist friendly, kids friendly, and then they come and it's something they can't do because it's
Not what they were
you need to
expecting.
crawl under somewhere. Yeah.
So in your experience, are you aware of any geocaching associations that were there in Latvia?
You mean like official?
Like a local, regional associations. I don't know if you would call them official. Like in my area, we have they call it SLAGA, St. Louis Area Geocachers Association. It kind of encompasses about 100-mile radius out of the greater St. Louis area, and it promotes geocachers in that area getting together, plans events, tries to help what's the word? I'm blanking on the word that I want here. But help promote geocaching to the public in a positive way,
Yeah.
and help promote
Yeah.
geocaching to families and stuff. Do you have Did Latvia have anything like that?
Mm, I'll say no. Well, then again, I've kind of been out of the loop a lot in the last few years, so but I will say that I don't think they are. I think it's too small.
Okay.
So it's probably, if you say 100-mile radius, well, the whole country, to drive from one side to the other, it's, you can do it in one day easily. So I think it's too small to have these separate kind of factions or
Okay.
there's usually when there's like a press, there's every now and then there's an article in the local media about geocaching or someone's being interviewed for like a local show or something like that. It's always just individual geocachers, telling their own things. Um, the only thing that I can think of, we did have a couple of mega events
Okay.
a while ago, and then for the mega event, some geocachers came together and they actually made an official entity for the sense of, because when you're applying for sponsorships and when you're selling stuff, you need bank accounts,
Right.
you need, an officially registered entity within the, not like a business, but still in the same register.
Right. Yeah. So,
So, and you
official
can
committee of some
like
sort.
taxes
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah. So there was an official committee, but I don't think that's doing anything now. That's just probably sitting dormant because we did have two mega events in 2013 and 14.
Okay.
But again, the country is too small and we barely managed to scrape so that first year we managed to scrape those 500 will attend logs to get the mega status. But then the actual turnout was maybe some like 300, 400
Oh, okay.
geocachers. But they still granted, for next year, they still granted the mega status because it's, like a recurring thing. So we didn't need the 500 will attends the next year. But then the next year's attendance was much lower. So it was only, I think, something like 200 or something cachers. So they figured, yeah, it's just too small to do the mega events, so we haven't had one since.
Okay.
And there's the big players nearby, Germany, Czech Republic, and they have all the gigas and megas and all that.
Right.
So
So it sounds like if you want to go to those extremely large events, you're traveling out of Latvia for the most part.
definitely, yeah. Yeah. I do maintain a list of all the events in Latvia, and then I was looking at the attendance and yeah, I think, usually our events are like about 20 something people. I think the maximum, like just a regular event, was about 100 something people that we've had.
Okay. So over there in Latvia, I'm not sure what your light posts are like, but a lot of the ones here in the United States have a little skirt that you can lift up. And we have our light post caches where you can put a little container underneath, and a lot of people love those light post caches. Does Latvia have those?
No, we don't have any of those light lampposts.
Okay.
Our lampposts are without the little skirt, I guess. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know if that's a specific type of lamppost that's made somewhere, but I don't think. And if I think about other places in Europe, I don't know if I've seen those.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
it's just a little metal cover that they place on over top of the bolts, and they
yeah,
generally
I
just lift
know.
up
Yeah,
and
in New Zealand, there's some of
okay.
them, but then again, not every lamppost is that. It's some specific, like, yeah, around parking lots.
Yeah, a lot of them are parking lots. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Again, that might have changed. There might be those lampposts now in Latvia, but at least some years ago, no.
Okay. From your experience, was there like a really common or popular type of container often used by geocachers in Latvia? Like,
So used to be the film container, like
Okay.
the 35 millimeter film.
Yeah.
But obviously, nowadays some people won't even know that it was a film container because, digital cameras have been around for too
Yeah.
long. But now the most popular container is you know, the PET bottle
Okay.
preforms.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like a little,
Kind of look like a test tube with a screw-on lid. Yeah.
yeah, they look like a test tube, but it's just a standard, your Coke bottle lid,
Yeah.
and they are preforms because that's what's used. They just being heated up and blown into a shape of whatever bottle they're gonna become. But somehow they got really popular in within geocaches, and now people are just buying them. And I know a couple of cachers who have just they just buy boxes of them, and then they kind of make like geocache kits.
Okay.
Make fitting logbook for it, a little pencil, and then just sell them to other
Yeah.
geocachers. With and that's why those have really been and they're quite watertight, and they're really easy to. You just kind of hang them on a little piece of wire, and you can just hang that in a tree, or you can slide it, put some magnets on it, just put it under a guardrail, and they're quite versatile and good.
Okay.
But then it's kind of one of those, people like loved and hated ones,
Yeah.
because people hate the micros in the woods.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, with all the
like
forests there in Latvia, are there a lot of micros in the woods there these days?
uh yeah, well, in the forest, because usually, like, yeah, that's good in the city, because then there's a lot of times there's no place for a big cache.
Right.
You can't hide an ammo can somewhere on the street. But in the forests, a lot of times it is actually, like, just a lunchboxy lock and lock type of containers, or clip and lock,
Okay.
however they're called in each country, like those little lunchboxes with those
Yeah. Lock and locks
those
are what
clips.
I'm familiar with calling them.
Yeah, lock
Yeah.
and lock. Yeah, yeah. Exactly. But there are some, if it's a geocaching trail, then yes, it's most likely gonna be those PET bottle preforms. And there's even a little holder. I think it's originally supposed to be like some sort of a pipe, PVC pipe holder, but it's the same diameter as the preform. And then you just do one nail into like either a fence post or a tree, and then they nicely kind of clip into there.
Okay.
And then if it's going along the trail, and yeah, you just have a couple hundred of those bottle preforms.
Okay.
And there's a couple of big, well, big-ish for the country standards, a few hundred. If it's a few hundred geocaches, that's a biggest power trail you'll get in
That's
Latvia.
pretty good size.
And there's this famous series that's dedicated to all the local geocaches. So there's about 200 something caches hidden, and each cache is named after a geocacher.
Oh, wow. That's pretty
That's
neat.
a power trail going through the forest, and it's like, yeah, it's one of these. So we have these really nice kind of pine forests that are really, yeah, the pine trees are quite far apart from each other, so
Okay.
you can walk through the forest really easily, and there's not a lot of like other growth or bush cover. So
Okay.
it's like not a dense forest, and it's really nice for walks. And Latvians like do a lot of mushroom picking, and yeah, and then just geocaching there. So yeah, and I happened to find I timed and found my 2000 found cache was my milestone was the cache with my own name that I
Oh,
found.
cool. That's
So,
neat.
yeah.
So you said the forests don't have a lot of extra undergrowth, so there's not a lot of bushwhacking and dealing with brambles and thorns and such.
Yeah, I mean the forests are diverse as well. There's going to be lots of different types of forests, and there's
Okay.
also quite a lot of swamp. So
Oh,
there can be maybe the forest itself. There's not a bushwhacking, but you're just walking in a swamp.
okay.
But then, some are thicker, some are denser, but it's mostly those because there's a lot of because that's our main export as well. It's timber,
Okay.
pine. And so there's lots of those planted pine forests, and they're planted, so they would be uh, you know, kind of easy to cut down and then replant and all that,
Okay. Okay.
which can pose problems when there's a geocaching trail and then suddenly all the cutting of the forest begins and then the trail goes
Yeah,
down.
suddenly a bunch of geocaches are disabled and
Yeah.
archived. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about New Zealand some now. New Zealand, as you said, much larger. And with the islands, the landscape is fairly different, I imagine. So can you tell us what you said you're on the southern island? Can
Yeah,
you tell
yeah,
us what
South Island.
that area is like?
Yeah, so that landscape's yeah, lots of nature, not that much population because it's the bigger of the two main islands, but at least, well, most of the people live in the North Island. We only have, I think we don't even have 1 million people in South Island
Okay.
because there's about 5 million total in New Zealand, but then most of them live up in Auckland. And in South Island, I'm in the biggest city in South Island, which is Christchurch, and that's about, I think, 400,000 people. And then the rest is mostly just small towns
Okay.
in South Island. And so there's a lot of, and there's this kind of, there's the Southern Alps going through the country, and kind of dividing that East Coast and West Coast. So it's the islands. The island is just like a elongated um, like an kind of long shape. And yeah, and there's the Southern Alps in the middle, and then there's the West Coast, kind of rainy weather, and then it holds all the clouds there, and they all rain there. And then on the East Coast, there's not that much rain, and yeah, Christchurch is kind of in the middle on the East Coast.
Okay.
And around Christchurch, actually, Christchurch is quite flat for New Zealand. We have the Port Hills just kind of just in town as well, but on the edge of the town. So the town itself is really flat, and there's the Canterbury Plains, which are also quite flat. But then most of the country otherwise is kind of mountainous.
Okay.
But again, I think it's a different. The elevations are not that high because the highest mountain in New Zealand is Aoraki Mount Cook, which is about 3,700. And it's a really difficult mountaineering. I think it's considered one of the kind of most unpredictable mountains to climb.
Oh,
Like not a lot of people climb it just because of the weather and the avalanches and glaciers and all that.
okay.
But yeah, but that also does mean that there's lots of hiking geocaches, which I like. So yeah, Mount Cook, obviously that has snow all year round, but then the lower mountains will have, they will have snow on them in winter, but in summer it's, nice rocky walking trails.
Okay. Um, of your geocaching there in New Zealand, has it been mostly just on the southern island, or have you been to the other islands as well?
I did live, when I first got here, I did live for 5 months in the North Island in Auckland and, geocached around there. And then there's the Chatham Islands that, so now it's actually reflected correctly on Project GC, but when I first got here, so I got here, that was the whole, that's a different story and that's, for a different type of podcast, but I did like, you see my background image, that's a sign we set up, just a long story short. There was 3 of us from Latvia. We went on this big world trip when we left in 2014, arrived in New Zealand 15 months later, having traveled, all across Asia and all that. And Chatham Islands in New Zealand was our goal because that's the furthest inhabited place from Latvia. Like if you look up
Okay.
the antipode, it's just in the ocean. But then if you look for closest inhabited land, that's Chatham Islands in New Zealand, and that was our goal. We set up that sign, and I found a few geocaches in the Chatham Islands as well. And at that point, it was funny because in Project GC it said that I have found 3 out of 2 regions in New Zealand. So the Chatham Islands wasn't like, it's such an kind of unknown. It's just these 2 tiny islands,
Okay.
which are and the thing is they're on the other side of the prime. Is it the prime meridian? Yeah. So they are, like, if I just look at my stats, so I have the most westerly cache found in west 176 degrees in Chatham Islands in New Zealand.
Okay.
And then I have my most easterly cache found east 176 degrees in New Zealand. So it's the Chatham Islands are on the other side of that, where the divide between west and
Wow.
east is.
Okay.
And so that also means it's really weird on maps. Like if you look at the map, if you scroll in your map in GPS, like sometimes there's weird glitches because it kind of can't understand the divide between east and
Okay.
west. And then if you look up sometimes the world map, the Chatham Islands jump completely on the other side, and then it's all sometimes it's all kind of weird.
Okay.
But anyway, now it's correct. Now it says on Project GC that I've found 3 out of 3 regions in New Zealand. So they've finally included Chatham Islands in those stats as well. But so there's the main regions are North Island, South Island, and Chatham Islands. And I found some caches on all 3. And then again, it's divided in smaller regions within each
So, like
island.
counties or parishes or however they're called, or
So there's 17 counties as per Project GC in New
okay.
Zealand, but actually they're not counties, they are actually
Regions.
regions.
Okay.
Like, if you in real life, you wouldn't call it a county,
It's a
it's a
region.
region.
Okay.
But for this, because it's all standardized in Project GC, so obviously, locally, and so there's not that many to find. And you can't really go county hunting that much in New Zealand. There's only 17. But I mean, I still have 3 more to cache in. I've cached in 14 out of the 17.
Wow.
So I still have a couple of 3 regions to go to.
So when you moved to New Zealand, from a geocaching standpoint, what kind of change did you see?
So again, the biggest change was was just that the demographic and the cache kind of ratings, the terrain ratings, because I went to my first event here, and without expecting anything really, and I would say 99% of of other geocachers were older than me, whereas in Latvia, they were all about my age. And if I go to a geocaching event in Latvia now, I'm 35, I'll see lots of people who are younger than me, whereas here, people that are younger than me in events are, geocachers kids who are, 10 years old. So that's and you go, if it's it might be a little easy hike, and it's gonna be a terrain 4 stars, 5 stars. Well, maybe not 5 stars for the easy, really easy hikes, but still. So it's really it's easy to get those, because if in Latvia those terrain 4, 4.5, terrain 5 caches, they were really rare and really hard to get.
Okay.
You actually have to plan something, get gear together, get other people. Here, you just go on a little hike and, you get 10 terrain 5 geocaches a day.
Okay.
But it's more about that the hikes can be long. So you can, here in New Zealand, that's another beauty of it, that you have a lot of easy caches in around town, but you also have those, there can be caches where you actually need to do a multi-day hike to get there,
Okay.
unless you have a helicopter. That's another.
As far as the landscape being different, what about the wildlife of the two areas? How is that different between Latvia and New Zealand?
Yeah, so well, you've heard of New Zealand wildlife being unique in the way, there's the flightless birds here, and we have no snakes here. There's, unlike Australia, where everything will try to kill you.
Yes.
Here, nothing tries to kill you. You can happily stick your hands into unknown places and dark little stumps and all that, and nothing will happen. There's a couple of spiders that are like, they're tiny bit venomous, but it's not going to be the end of the world if they bite you. There's this one nasty spider here where it's not the venom of the spider, but it's the bite, because the spiders, I think they feed on rotting flesh.
Okay.
So
Yes.
if it bites you, it's just a really high chance of infection. So you have to clean it as soon as possible.
It's like a
Otherwise,
corrosive
it gets
venom.
infected. And yeah, I've seen someone who had like this kind of big, like it was an old scar, but it was like almost like a hole in his leg,
Yeah.
where it was used, like he get the spider bite and got all infected.
We have one like that here called the brown recluse. That's a very corrosive venom and it will
Yeah, yeah,
destroy
yeah.
the
It's
the flesh
the
like that.
white tail spider here. Other than that, yeah, no snakes, no other, no black widows or anything like that.
What about Latvia? Is
Whereas,
there snakes
whereas in
and
Latvia, it's also pretty tame,
okay.
but we do have one venomous snake in Latvia.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that basically we only have we only have two snakes in Latvia.
Oh, okay.
Well, technically we have three, but the third one's so rare that you never see it. But then there's the two common ones. One's venomous, one's completely harmless, and they both look very similar.
Ah, of course they do.
And there's this pattern on the head that you need to know. Like, if you haven't seen them, if you haven't looked them up before, you won't know which one's which. You have to know the pattern. And I found actually plenty of those venomous ones while caching. I've never gotten bitten by one, but yes, you have to, like, if you're lifting, some, maybe there's some old wood or something in the forest. Yeah, sometimes you have to be mindful that, yeah, just lift it, check if there's a snake before sticking your hand in.
Right.
And yeah, they kind of like to sunbathe around the swamps sometimes. I've been on these trails around the swamps, and then sometimes you just see like a huddle of them, yeah, just like sunbathing in the sun. But then, if you don't, you just don't mind them, they don't mind you,
Okay.
unless they're in the middle of the trail and you step on one.
Okay.
And other than that, yeah, Latvia wildlife, it's a lot of deer, moose. We have like 5 brown bears in the country. Um, there's kind of people say that there's some bears in some woods. No one has ever seen one. No, well, there are actually, I think I've heard that there's actually more now, like they've migrated from Russia or something.
Okay.
Um, and there was this tale about, like, it's kind of like an urban legend about this bear. There's this tiny island. So in Latvia, we have So the Baltic Sea has like a big gulf, the Gulf of Riga,
Okay.
and there's a little island in the middle of that gulf. And actually, island technically belongs to Estonia. Somehow we gave it away after the First World War, and now we don't have any islands in the sea.
Okay.
Well, Estonia has like hundreds, and so I don't know why we gave away our only one. But anyway, so apparently one springtime, and so they definitely didn't have any bears on that island. But then one springtime, the locals on the island saw that there's like a bear footprints, and they're like, "What's like we don't have any bears. Like what's happening?" And so there was this urban legend that this bear. So in winter the Gulf freezes over, so you can
Right.
walk on the ice on the sea. So apparently a bear walked over on the ice, walked to the island, and then in springtime the ice melted, and the bear was stuck on the island. And apparently the next winter he got away, and
Huh.
so like no one knows, was there a bear? Was there not a bear?
That's wild.
Yeah.
What about in New Zealand? Are there any kind of big mammals down there or larger predators of any kind?
Yeah, so no predators really, yeah, because that's the whole kind of thing that New Zealand tries to do. Like they try to keep predator free because, yeah, if we got any natural kind of predators, that would kind of be the end of those flightless birds here. So,
Yeah.
because they're really, they can't really fend for themselves, they can't fly away. So there's actually I've seen so there's possums,
Okay.
which is in Australia it's an endangered species. In New Zealand it's a pest.
Okay.
So it's funny how in New Zealand people say only possum is a no, only good possum is a dead possum, and then I think in Australia it's something else. It's like endangered.
And those are
Um,
different than the types of possums we have up here in the United
I
States.
think it's different. Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
think it's spelled different, doesn't it?
It starts with
There's
an O,
a
doesn't it?
silent O. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So they kind of they look they're just like a little furry. Like you
Your
see
possums
them
are
sometimes.
cuter looking than ours.
Yeah, yeah, and they freeze. So a lot of times, like in the nighttime, I've been driving back from somewhere, and then you see like if you see one, they like it freezes in the headlights, like it just
Okay.
like instantly like I think it thinks that if I'm not moving, you can't see me,
Okay.
which is obviously not true. But yeah, it's funny how there's one time we were coming back from doing some geocaching out here, and there was one on it's on like a road bridge on the guardrail on the road bridge, and it
Okay.
just like just frozen the headlights on the bridge, and just like you can't see me. But yeah, there's actual rewards for hunting them, and on the Chatham Islands, actually, it's even more because it's even more secluded, and they have they have some of the rarest bird species in the world there. They had the rarest oyster catcher bird on the Chatham Islands, and some other birds that are only on the Chatham Islands, and they had an actual cash prize. They apparently had one feral cat out somewhere, and they had an actual cash prize for whoever shoots it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and I think no, on the Chatham Islands it might even be that they don't have any rodents. Like we have mice, on the main islands we have mice and rats and all that. But I think on the Chatham Islands it might even be rodent free.
Okay. Yeah, with such rare species, it sounds like they're very concerned about protecting and preserving that natural habitat.
Yeah, like if you will travel to New Zealand, they're gonna ask you to declare all the food you have, whether you have been in wilderness areas in the last few months, whether you have hiking boots, whether you're bringing any wood or anything in the country. So yeah, they're kind of really precious about that, and understandably so.
Yeah. Join me for the rest of the conversation in the next episode. Until then, cache on. You've been listening to Geocache Adventures with me, Shadow Dragon 1. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, or go to geocacheadventures.org and you can find the information on the contact page. Theme music is by The Travel Bugs. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Have you heard of FTF Magazine? It's the magazine for geocachers. It is full of articles and pictures, all submitted by geocachers just like you. I'm a subscriber myself, and I love it. My favorite part is the little snippets on the edges of the articles on all the different pages. Those are my favorites. Just go to ftfgeo.com to check them out and tell them Shadow Dragon 1 sent you.